speaking there to Anthony Altbecker from Research and Program Director from the Center for Development and Enterprise. Now, the 20th Annual Investing in African Mining Indaba is set for the 3rd to the 6th of February 2014 and will be held in Cape Town, South Africa, with the main focal point still being the capitalization and development of mining interests in Africa. Earlier, we spoke with Jonathan Moore, Managing Director of Mining Indaba, about the value of this event and the broader mining environment in South Africa. Jonathan, thank you so much for making the time to join us. Of course, you join us in South Africa at a particularly sad but also celebratory time for South Africans on the passing of the global icon Nelson Mandela. You were in the US when you received the news. What was your reaction?
Obviously, he transcends South Africa. He's significantly larger than that in the global context. And so allow me to provide my condolences to the Mandela family and to the entire nation of South Africa on the passing of Madiba. Again, obviously, he was significantly larger than that, and his loss will be shared by all of us.
Thank you so much for those words. Perhaps let's now turn our focus to the Mining Indaba. I mean, this event, if we look at the numbers, it has grown phenomenally over the years. What's behind its success?
I think at its core context, the Mining Indaba represents the opportunity to bring investors together with mining CEOs and mining ministers to look at the great opportunities that exist here investing in mining on the African continent. And as the world wakes up to that, so too have they woken up to the Indaba, and that's been the big catalyst for our growth over the past few years.
With that said, what can we expect in the 2014 Indaba?
The Indaba is shaping up to be another great event. Obviously, it's a challenging time within our market, but in those challenging times, investors need the opportunity to engage and to be educated on what's happening in both the geographic locations and then within the companies and what they're working on as far as exploration trends and things along those lines. And so from that perspective, the Indaba continues to be a critical event on the calendar, and so we're anticipating that February will be another great event. We're anticipating that we'll grow slightly, even a very challenging marketplace, and we'll address some of the issues that are top of mind of the investors in this type of an environment.
Geographically speaking, I don't want to make the assumption that the discussions will be revolving just around South Africa's mining industry. Which other countries are likely to get a little bit of prominence and discussion?
We cover the entire continent, obviously, and it is a continental event, but the DRC, Ethiopia, Angola, all of those will be countries that we cover. This year, because the Indaba is celebrating its 20th anniversary and because we are coming into the 20th anniversary of post-apartheid South Africa, there is a great opportunity for us to tell the story of South Africa mining a little more overtly than we typically do, talk about the great history that we've had together and the incredibly bright future that we have going forward.
Some of the key issues that are potentially tension points that delegates are going to be keen to address?
I think investors in any sector want two things. They want transparency and they want consistency. And I think when we look specifically at African mining, those are the areas that are most frequently of concern for investors. I think if they understand the prevailing scenarios in any given geographical area, if they understand what's happening within a country as it relates to mining code and mining charter and how royalty rights and taxation issues are going to occur, as long as they stay consistent, then it's up to that individual to ascertain whether or not it fits in with their risk tolerance and their portfolio. Right. So I think those are the things from a governmental perspective that people are always going to want to hear. On the corporate side, obviously it's been a challenging time for many of the large mining companies. Commodity prices have been soft over the past year, and so what's happening within those individual companies, what's likely to happen in the foreseeable future, how are the mining CEOs addressing those issues? I think those will be the key top of mind issues for our attendees.
If we turn our attention to the South African situation, what are the pressing concerns that investors still harbor about the industry?
Again, I think right within the context of what we've seen in the last 2 years, there has been significant strife and significant challenges within the marketplace here specifically. Issues of labor, issues of political regime, and how the current government is addressing certain things. However, I think what investors have seen most recently has been both sides coming together in a collaborative fashion. I think that there is movement that's in the right direction. Again, it gets back to those issues of transparency and consistency, and how do we start to get to a point where there is a clearly defined mining vision for South Africa that is going to withstand the test of time, and that will allow, I think, investors to get more excited about the opportunities here, which again are fantastic.
Of course, you've always traditionally attracted a very large government representation at the Indaba, and I'm sure no doubt no different for the 2014 Indaba. From a policy and more specifically a regulatory environment perspective, what are some of the issues that you're hoping the government delegations will be able to take on?
I think the biggest question there starts to get to issues of nationalization and nationalism and what those translate to. So again, issues of taxation, issues of policy, of mineral rights and how those are going to be done. The biggest issue there, again, is consistency. I think if an investor can look and say, hey, I know what the prevailing scenario is here, it's consistent, then I can, again, determine whether or not that works for my investment portfolio and whether or not I'm willing to put capital to risk at that area. So I think that's the thing that investors are going to be asking of those mining ministers in those formats where we give the mining ministers opportunities to address the delegation.
And how do delegates get on board?
www.miningindaba.com is the best place to go.
Simple.
That has all the information as far as our agenda and how to register and all the details on the